G'day guys and gal, we all know that the lore exists to prop up the tabletop and sell models, not the other way round. And while the lore doesn't often get directly affected by a bunch of sweaty neckbeards playing with small plastic toys in big ass tournaments, it actually has happened. With some pretty big events occurring because a certain side won in actual real life tabletop games. Now letting the players decide the lore via gameplay has ended pretty badly a number of times for a number of companies, including Games Workshop. But you have to admit it's a pretty fun way to engage the community, so I thought why not take this time to look at all the times the tabletop game has influenced the actual events of the lore, either via tournaments or players submitting their own games in massive events. Before we get started, I'm about to teach you the secret to true happiness. You ready? It's by being healthy. As such, you should do everything you can to be healthy. The first of which is to replace some of the most extremely self-detrimental habits with a fume device. Fume is a flavored air device where you simply just put in various different flavored charges and suck down the yummiest air you'll ever taste. No chemicals, no nasty stuff, just air. To complement your new healthier journey, Fume also acts as a fun little fiddle device to help with any fidgeting you might have. You don't even need to be trying to break a bad habit to use Fume. I didn't, yet I still find it fun to use. It's like a nice quick little distraction when I'm losing focus. You ready to get based? Fume has just released their new magnetized base so you can secure and store your Fume in the most aesthetic way possible. It also spins, which is fun. Did I mention that there are also a number of delicious flavors to choose from? My favorite being the classic crisp mint, as it tastes like you're just sucking in a fresh pepperminty air. So to get 10% off your Fume journey pack, then go to tryfume.com/majorkill or scan the QR code on screen or just use code MAJORKILL. Up to you. Cheers to Fume for sponsoring this video. Today we'll look at every time the tabletop has influenced the lore in any capacity. Should be interesting. Let's get into it. The first example I need to mention isn't actually from 40k, but it's so hilarious and ended so badly that I need to mention it. That being the Storms of Chaos lore event that occurred in Warhammer Fantasy. Fantasy was getting put on the chopping block, but GW decided to let the players decide the lore. So they got players to submit the results of their games and then would use the results to determine how Chaos's invasion of the old world would go. I think they were hoping for a tight campaign full of Chaos victories that would push the forces of Order to the brink, but what they instead got was Chaos getting their fucking cheeks clapped hard, as a result of them being extremely weak in the current patch, losing so badly that they technically weren't even supposed to be able to leave the Chaos Wastes. GW kept intervening to give Chaos wins and allow them to advance closer to their goal via loopholes or straight up just ignoring the player results. So despite Chaos getting mega stomped, they still got to have their final battle, where they ended up getting the upper hand and about to win, but then Grimgor Ironhide ran in and kicked Archaon in the balls, before declaring himself the best, and then that was that. Archaon ran home, nobody really died, and the Orcs were the best, as they won the final exit poll that GW made in a last-ditch hope that people would vote for Chaos. Overall, it was super retarded and quite embarrassing, probably why GW just decided to say fuck it and blew up the entire setting in the following campaign, a campaign which had absolutely zero input from the fanbase. Now onto actual 40k. The most recent event that occurred was with the release of Leviathan, in which the fate of the world of Ogrim would be decided. Would the Space Marines do Space Marine shit and come out on top, or would the Tyranids actually win for once? Well, it was looking like a classic Space Marine victory for a while, but then in the 11th hour, the Tyranid players rallied and tipped the scale, resulting in a Tyranid victory in the event. Despite a valiant defense by the Imperium, in which it actually looked like they would win, the Tyranids were too many and too vicious. Ogrim was lost and consumed. In terms of what this means for the lore, not a crazy amount, and I don't think we'll ever see this eventuate into a whole lot, to be honest. However, it does allow the Tyranids to progress deeper into Imperial space and threaten other Imperial worlds. The real life impact was that the upcoming Tyranid models were unveiled sooner, so overall it wasn't this super impactful thing, more so a fun way for people to get more invested in the Leviathan launch. But that's probably for the best, as leaving things in the hands of the fans for big lore events usually doesn't go down the way you're expecting it to. However, what was a massive lore-shaking community event was the 2008 Cadia campaign. At least I think it was 2008, it could have been earlier, when GW went completely hog wild and set up this massive multi-sector campaign that was a war between the forces of Order and Disorder and a bunch of other shit. It was determined by players choosing a war zone and then submitting their match results on that war zone, with Imperial wins gaining Imperial ground and vice versa. There was also event cards that could be played that would give an advantage to either side via an in-lore event. For example, one Imperial event card allowed the Craftworld Ulthwé to appear, which would give the Imperium a bunch of automatic victories as the Craftworld would destroy a large Chaos force. On the flip side, Chaos could play an event card that would summon a Dark Eldar raid on a number of human worlds, giving Chaos a number of automatic wins. There was a shitload of these cards, with some even being mutual, such as an event card that basically said a war zone was about to close, so get your ass down and fight one last battle there. I want to try and put into perspective how many war zones there was. Each sector had like 15 or so planets to fight over, with there being 5 or more sector war zones. Each planet had thousands of battles taking place on it to decide who the overall winner of that planet was. It's hard to go into more detail about the scale of it since this event almost happened 20 years ago, and I've basically been troweling through decade-old forums to gather information, but it was fucking massive. To the credit of this campaign, it actually seems like there was a fair bit of back and forward, as each side needed to coordinate where they would direct their wins in order to make a difference. At times, one side would become way too obsessed with a specific planet, getting its control rate to 100%, but neglecting many other war zones in the process. So it did sort of simulate an actual war. As the Imperium had more players, they had the natural advantage, and they seemed to win more war zones, but the idea was solid. Halfway through the campaign, the Webway was opened up to become its own war zone. However, only Eldar, Dark Eldar, and Thousand Sun players could post Webway results in order to reflect the factions that actually fought there in the lore. In terms of the lore, this mostly revolved around Margan Ra being the Eldar leading, gathering his forces on Belial 4 and then fighting against the Thousand Suns. As there are more Eldar players than Thousand Sun players, and as the Dark Eldar players mostly decided to give their wins to the Eldar, it was an absolute stomp, with the Eldar smashing the Thousand Suns. They were even able to play an event card which brought the lost craft world of Altansar back out of the Eye of Terror, meaning that bit of lore seemed to come from this community event, which is pretty cool. Even the Tau got to get involved in their own side war zone. However, as all other players were sending their wins into the main war zones, Tau players steamrolled their war zone without too much drama. The scale of the lore in this event was insane, with GW literally name dropping every single character that they could via the event cards. For example, a Chaos event card had Lucius the Eternal invading a planet and raping its populace to death. However, other characters like Azrael, Logan, and Ahriman also had their own event cards. Kind of think of them like Monopoly, community chests, or chance cards. They say stuff like, "You are seriously disabled, collect $50, as a bit of spice, but all the card really needs to say or mean is collect $50. Same with the event cards. They could just say, Imperials get double wins for the next 24 hours on planet Pickle Juice, but instead, for a bit of lore flavor, it'll say, Saint Celestine becomes Saint Molestine as she bends over Chaos backwards and eviscerates their shitholes. And I for one am a big fan of that. The event basically ended in a semi-Chaos victory, as the Chaos players were a bit more tactical with how they used their wins, not just putting them into already secure war zones like the Imperial players did. The Eldar easily won their Webway war and shut it off from outside invasion, just as the Tau easily won their own war zone. As for the lore, Cadia is consumed by the Eye of Terror, yet it doesn't actually fall or get destroyed, just isolated. The Cadian Gate is no longer a choke point, as Chaos is now free to attack the Imperium along a wider front. Except GW then decided to make this entire event non-canon, as it was a bit of a nothing burger and they wanted to do something massive for Guilliman's return. Thus they created the new Fall of Cadia lore, where Cadia is actually destroyed and the Great Rift opens. The issue with community-led lore is that you kind of have to make it up as you go, whereas lore that is set in stone by GW has a lot of planning from numerous lore masters, thus is a lot more deep and interesting. However, it does look like a few things became canon, such as Margan La leading the Eldar in the defense of the Webway and dragging his craft world out of hell. The results also probably inspired the new Fall of Cadia lore, so it wasn't a complete waste. Overall, I am very impressed with the scale of the event and how many people actually got involved. Please comment below if you're a part of the event. It happened a while ago, but surely there's still a few of you down there. Another potential real-life event that translated into the lore was the Plague Wars. I was told that the Plague Wars were partially influenced by a community event, the war zone in which Mortarion invaded Ultramar. I can't find much more detail about this event, however the Plague Wars ended in Mortarion getting a new model as well as a bit of a Death Guard range refresh. There are also a few books about the lore behind this, with it ending in a hard-fought Imperial victory, so I'm not sure if I've just been misled or there was some kind of event surrounding Mortarion's release, which subtly impacted the lore, such as which planets fell. Then years later, the lore was built up upon even further with the book releases, which to be honest isn't the worst call. Let the narrative event play out, look at the results, and then spend months formulating lore behind it, not just doing it on the fly. But once again, I could be talking absolute shit about this one. Overall, events determining the lore doesn't usually go that well, as the lore ends up being super shallow or super random. Pretty much every time it has happened, it ends up getting retconned or scrapped. With them being so burnt by this in the past, I don't think GW is going to do anything more beyond just basic funsy stuff like the War for Ogrim, and you know what? That is okay. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up the 2024 Major Kill Cosplay calendar. Yes, it is live right now, which you might not know since the launch video got removed from YouTube for nudity. Just goes to show how good the calendar must have been. Link to buy is below, alongside more information on the calendar, so have a look. Hit the subscribe button and hit the real subscribe button for more lore impacting content. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.